world. I have returned, unwilling. My hands sticky from squishing its black bulbous seeds. I imagined myself asleep, a toddler, in the vacant cavity of the papaya. Its flesh becoming my flesh, its vivid tangerine meat chopped in pieces. I watch myself disappear in my grandfather's mouth. I rise before dawn to a blinding light, fire burning, oil-soaked cloths in coconut shells, heralding the arrival of Vishu, the new year. An altar heaped with seasonal produce, gold coins, and blossoms plucked from the blonde rain trees of southern India. Between the glowing husk lamps, I see my face ablaze. A bead of sweat falls off my nose. I dive into a frothing cup of cane juice, filled to the brim. I melt with the ice cubes, drowning in the verdant drink, as my sisters chatter, oblivious to me seated beside them. I slurp my liquid self up through a straw. In my 30s, a spinster, I bruise easily like an overripe peach, squashed by its proximity to heavier things. The contusions transform me from periwinkle to ultramarine. To release my burdens is to dissolve. I sit here between my eyebrows in silence, an eagle circling my head in the midnight sky, 1 foot in my mortal life, one hand reaching for eternity. Like the fountain pen stains I could not wash off even in the twilight, I remain imprinted. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitya. That was really beautiful. Now, some questions, and I'm really excited to ask this question. In fact, you mentioned earlier on that this was different from your other kinds of poems, and that you actually wrote this in a stream of consciousness, almost. Now, how difficult was it writing this poem? Because it is laden with so many memories, and as well as imaginings as well, and I sense that there's a certain level of pain inside. Yeah, perhaps you can just shed some light on this.
Yes, no, thank you, Elijah. I think this was actually a very difficult poem because as poets, sometimes we don't like to write directly about ourselves. So this was a poem that I wrote as part of a workshop. And I think I had to take basically a pause and look at myself. And it helped to recall images, rather than incidents. How did I feel in that moment? And if you notice in the poem, it has a bit of a tinge of, I guess you can call it magic realism. And I think this is how I dealt with talking about myself. Rather than me as me, a person, a human being, I become fruit, I become, almost a shapeshifter, I become amorphous. So that really helped to translate and to really, I think, tap into those emotions by projecting them almost in something else, but not projecting them so that it is separate from you, but we're becoming something else, almost. So it was difficult. And actually, when I submitted it, I wondered if I wanted to submit something this personal. But since the topic was catharsis, it was such a relief to write it and have it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very important point, because in Poetry 101 for all literature students and academics, right, it is extremely important to actually differentiate between the poet himself or herself and versus the persona in the poem. So you are not necessarily the character that is depicted in the poem. But at the same time, the irony is that you need to invest so much of your own feelings and so much of the weightiness of how you actually feel moments to moments and all your lived experiences. Somehow it has to be inside the poem as well. Now, how long did it take you to write this poem? Minutes, days?
So once I committed to writing it, and I think that process of committing to writing about myself is what took long. And then when I decided I'm writing it, it came out, like I said, in a stream of consciousness. It took probably minutes in some sense. The very first draft, it just came out. And then I found that I had to fine tune it because it was such a stream of consciousness that it couldn't be presented, I guess, to anyone except myself. So over the course of 1 year or so, I fine tuned it based on feedback in small groups. But honestly, the change from the first draft to now is not dramatic. I would say it's only about 10 to 15% changed. It's generally the same. Yeah.
And it took you 1 year to trim it.
I think so, because I think with poetry, sometimes you're so married to a concept or what you're trying to say. So as a poet, I mean, I'm glad what you said, earlier, you put ourselves into it, but once the poem is written, I think you need to take distance from it to make it acceptable to somebody else. So I think that process of I've written it, but now I'm not as attached to it was really important. And it took about a year for me to, I think, finally let go of certain ideas I was very married to in the beginning. Yeah, you're
right. And thank you so much, Nitya. That was really, really awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elijah. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And next up, we'll have Bethan, and she's going to read to us Lady Macbeth.
Hello.
Hi.
I forgot to unmute. So I was just saying that it's really, really a huge honor, like you said, to be part of this event, and such an honor to be able to share my poetry with so many people, because I think art is really about connection. So Lady Macbeth is really about the concept of self-destructive ambition. And it's also about the way in which society has weighted results and achievement, and it somehow translates to people's like worth, and how this has become like you have to achieve certain things in order to be able to gain sort of respect or value in society these days. So this was kind of a bit like an epiphany, which is where the catharsis kind of comes from, where it's like the realization that everything has led up to this, and that led up to this kind of this need to achieve, and this self-destructive ambition has come from all of this. So here it is.
It's all yours.
My worth is not tied to my achievements. I am more than an A grade or 600 points. I am more than results, and my value does not disappear like a dream should I fail. I know these, but still I feel the need to achieve, like an urge stirring deep in my belly, the need to prove that I deserve the space I have taken, to justify the resources I have used, that I am the best choice, investment, bet. I need to be better, and I need to be the best. I cannot settle, I will not settle for less. Nothing beats the thrill of coming first, of being the one who beat them all, the strongest, smartest, best rehearsed. My ambition overleaps itself and falls on the other, with late nights and early mornings and desperate praying to a God I don't believe in, folding together in a blur of pleading and writing and working and crying, because I will never be the best at everything, so will never prove I should be allowed to live. Tis and torpor, well-known visitors, tracking lines across the bridge of my nose to wet my pillow, knowledge of I should do something falling by my cheek. But my legs cannot move and my mind cannot work. They cannot comprehend the need to do something should I want more than this, or that exams are tests, waking is a test, smiling is a test, being better is the test. There is no time left for rest. I must be better than them and myself. Or there is nothing to prove that I am deserving, nothing to show that my life was not wasted when I myself am long desecrated. My time is borrowed, so I must use it well, yet on pointless questions I dwell. Who's even keeping score? A question I'd never asked before, or worse. Am I to be like this forevermore? Thank you.
Thank you, Bethan. That was really something. Now, how long do you take to practice that?
Maybe like a day.
Wow, okay. Okay. Well, I mean, of course, we are not going to say that, that was really Lady Macbeth emanating from you, etc. But you were able to put yourself into her shoes. And how difficult a transition was that, really, in real life?
I was using Lady Macbeth as more of like a parallel, because I studied Macbeth in school, and I found the themes really, really interesting, especially the theme of like self-destructive ambition. And although it like manifests itself in a very much more like dramatic with greater consequences kind of way in the play, it really feels like there is like this parallel, because Lady Macbeth really wants to get as much as she can out of life, and in her situation it's killing the king. But I think there's you can find like a sort of connection with her in her need to like have more than what she already has. Like she needs to do something more than just existing. And I think there's always this kind of yearning, and how that manifests itself is different in everyone. And in this case, it's very much doing anything that you can to be better. But what is considered better is very much tied to results. And it's kind of like this confusion, because the persona knows that this is not the ultimate measure of them as a person, but still feels like it kind of is in that sense. So that was really interesting for me to explore. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And in this soliloquy of sorts, it has really brought out the Freudian ideas of id, ego, and superego, I think, to some extent. Thank you, Baton. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And now next up, we'll have Kai-Ting. And Kai-Ting has written a very imaginative poem entitled, I Think I Drank a Cup of Chamomile Tea on the Internet. And I dare say that this is the first time I come across such an intriguing title. Yes, Kai-Ting, it's all yours.
Hi, it's a great honor for me to be here tonight, to be able to share my work with so many people. So I think I drank a cup of chamomile tea on the internet. It's my thoughts on how the younger generation, or just in general, how people today are seeking catharsis through the internet and like social media. So catharsis is usually, I feel, seen as a singular experience, but through this poem, I would like to kind of question if catharsis is a singular experience, because if the pain of a person persists despite going through a cathartic experience, then it begs to question, is catharsis a cycle, a continuous cycle, perhaps for a period of time, or is it just it's not a singular experience?
Sure,
yes.
It's all yours. Go ahead.
I think I drank a cup of chamomile tea on the internet. Thumping thumbs, hammering characters recklessly. The vertical cursor blinks hypnotizingly. Grooming scattered, bursting, overflowing thoughts into cold comfort of blank back boxes of tweets. Neurons carrying messages of toes punctured ruthlessly from the rugged terrains of our soft pads, hoping the erect characters sprung like white coffins will relieve fee like the first sip of chamomile tea. Harsh pixels glare back, demanding one to reconsider the cost of comfort in 280 characters. Potential strip anonymity of the internet taunts, yet we do it. Social hopefuls, we are built to elevate the mind, a wretched, grieving, alienated mind. If I stared hard enough into the blinding tiny glass spheres, illuminating our darkest grievances, little enformized characters are sitting immobilized, staring at me with pittance, passively watching, pensively. Sometimes a strained mind could see strained little hands caressing our cheek, wrinkled, old-born hands. Faceless, yet I knew. Their faces too are tear-streaked, torn with knowing. Perhaps that is what our world has romanticized for us. Perhaps that is what I as a social hopeful hope. Hiding away the pain that takes away our breath, seeking comfort from strangers than beloveds. Caring hopefuls, hypocritical hopefuls, ashamed hopefuls, are we? Ignorant hopefuls, secreting sweet souring walls of yellow, purging till they felt released. Are they? Perhaps they have dug deeper, aware of their afflictions, rugged hands pulling strung nerves of one who sought, digitalized invisible puppeteer. Or is it you, contorting one to believe, behave, beget, yes, I am better, bereft light white eyes cursor trawl through revered echoes of the internet to their voices? Thank you.
Thank you. Now there are a lot of questions I have actually. Of course, you know, the simplest one really is how do you actually arrive at the juxtaposition of both a chamomile tea as well as the experience of using the internet to air your grouses or maybe to even search deep into your psyche. But I think I'll leave that for next time. But the real question I really have for you, right, is there are two extremes. There are two kinds of people that we meet online. And one, as you say, are those who hide behind the veneer or the veil of anonymity. And the other kind would be in the likes of Donald Trump or Elon Musk, where they are, you know, really exploiting their public figure characters as such. Which do you think, are they similar? And which do you think is more effective in achieving a certain kind of catharsis within oneself, to remain anonymous or to be public like that, like Donald and Elon?
I think that would be a matter of perspective. For example, if I'm sharing something very personal, very painful, I would not necessarily want someone that I know in real life maybe to find out that I'm having these feelings. I think this is especially so if given that there are more often than times that people, they would want to protect their loved ones from such pain. So I think through the internet, the anonymity of the internet, it helps them to find a source of catharsis in their own way without maybe worrying about their loved ones. But if I would want everyone to know that I'm going through this pain and I would like to maybe like seek help in a way from people I know in real life, then I feel that perhaps that would be done maybe through our, for example, personal accounts on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this poem also wants to say like the risk we take every time we use an anonymous profile on the internet to seek catharsis. There's always that risk there that one day someone in your real life might find out that it's actually you who are saying such things. And so true. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that through this poem.
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? And it's a Pandora's box of sorts. Likewise, I want to write certain things in my stories, but how much of myself is captured in those stories and those accounts, isn't it? Somebody who knows me may actually come across it and, hey, I know who wrote this. Yeah, so it's similar. But thank you so much. I think that was really brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And now let's have Isabella, and her poem is entitled A Silver Lining. Isabella, please.
Hi, everyone. What a joy it is to be here. I think the greatest gift to me is really to be able to hear the poems of all the contributors here as well. Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I'm just going to start with an introduction of myself. So I'm an educator, but I do have an interest in writing and I'm passionate about the arts. I might not go into actually discussing my poem yet. I think I'll just go into reading it.
Sure.
They call this a silver lining, but I prefer to call them invisible linings instead. Surreptitious, hardly noticed, felt even. Or like the linings in the inner coat of your jacket. You don't think about them, but they hold everything together. Sometimes God's hand works stealthily, but steadily like that. Hardly perceptible, but there.
Thank you. And Isabella, How long has this idea been inside you and resonating inside before you actually penned this poem?
I think that's such an interesting question because like the process of like writing the poem was quite a new one for me as well.
Mhm.
I like indeed I think it had been steeped and brewing this idea of uh having a vision for one's life, or maybe having a dream inside that's actually been brewing for a long time and in a
Mhm.
way buried even.
Okay.
So I would say I'm quite a positive person in general. So the silver linings idea was something that naturally came up to me.
Mhm.
But in trying to challenge myself to be positive about things I cannot see, and to encourage myself in very discouraging circumstances,
Yeah.
I felt like I really had to look further. Yeah, so of course there's the mention of faith, and maybe spirituality is not something everyone is comfortable with,
Mhm.
but it was just something that was really from the heart. So yeah, not sure if it actually connects with anyone else.
Sure. I think it does to a certain extent in a deeper way. It's not a very surface-like kind of poem. Two questions and they are related. Which one would you hold more dear, the process of writing this poem or the product itself after the process has already been initiated and you are actually holding the fruit in your hands or literally on a screen or paper?
Okay, so it's process versus product, right?
Yeah, since you're an educator, right?
Oh, actually, I would say the process for me,
Mhm.
because I think the honesty it took to write that. I mean, it was a short poem. It is a short poem, and I was actually quite self-conscious about the process because when I read it to like a few closer people, the first thing they asked me was about why it didn't rhyme.
Okay.
But I think one of my characteristics is that I have quite thick skin. So I just decided I would submit it anyway because I felt it came from a genuine place. I think the process, because the like the genuine connection that can come with like the other readers, it comes from that sincere place. Maybe there are the particular words and the product which they connect with, but it's really the feelings that I hope to convey. And I don't think my poetry craft is that fantastic or refined. So actually it was just that moment I wanted to capture, and I think that is more encapsulated in the process more than anything else.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really brutally honest. Yeah. And as I said earlier on to the rest of you, a poem doesn't need to rhyme, in fact. And also, the trick is sometimes the hardest poems are also the shortest. And the shortest poems are the hardest to write even, right? They take the longest time to think through and to, yeah, distill. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Isabella. Okay, now our next poet winner is Gerald Jarrett Yam, and his poem is titled Witness. Gerald, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gerald. I'm a lawyer and also a poet. So my latest collection is Intruder from Ethos Books. And I've got two previous collections with books actually as well. When I saw this Catharsis Open Call, I was really interested in it because as a confessional poet, I've been writing about these things and using writing as catharsis for quite a few years. But then this open call got me I guess, questioning about the act of writing and the act of catharsis through writing, because catharsis involves some form of repression. So, there's an external or internal force repressing the speaker. And if the poem is written in the first person, that fosters, that familiarity and the solidarity with the reader already. So we almost take for granted the authenticity of the speaker and it's the innocence of the speaker as well. So that got me thinking, how do we navigate the truths that are presented in a cathartic poem? Are there truths that are misguided? Is the act of catharsis as liberating as it is, or can it be used as a weapon as well to criminalize other people? So this poem is entitled Witness. The red car in the porch is seething. Cornered, the frangipani tree can only distract by hurling its flowers. No, the car has gone missing. Bright capsule swallowed by the asphalt's black tongue. My father's handprints on the wheel. I am trying my best to remember, and the helpless tree is actually a pond, whipped by orange flashes of koi. I hear their mouths jostle over the blunt cigarettes of my fingers. Without glancing, I know my mother must be rooted to a corner of her bed like a foregone conclusion. Temper is inherited and therefore blameless, or so I tell you the morning you left, our mouths barren trees. Can't you see everything in this poem is a reasonable description? I am not who I claim to be, but I cannot be more than who I am. Now, can we move on to the question of blame? Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. That was really awesome. Okay, you are a multi-published poet, recognized in Singapore. So how cathartic was the process of writing this poem?
It is cathartic, but I think in a different way, because I was trying to do something different with this. You know, in the past, when I was writing my previous poems, it's really about, you know, the act of catharsis and that liberation, and, you know, the act of standing away from oneself and having that distance is also freedom, right? And that's why we love, you know, writing through catharsis, because it gives us freedom from repression, so to speak. But with this one, I was trying to think of a scenario where, you know, sometimes confessional poetry or cathartic poetry, the truth of that and the truth of the voice of the speaker in the first person is taken for granted. So I wanted to use an unreliable narration in the poem that I don't use very often at all in other poems. But that was the open call sort of, I think it got me thinking about this idea.
Right, so that acted as a kind of stimulus and challenge to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't connect the two actually, you know, the title of the poem as to your profession. And in fact, just now you already dropped some clues and hints along the way when you use words such as criminalize, etc. Yeah. So when I reflected, right, I saw that the title of a poem is Witness, and you are by trade a lawyer. So how much of your professional life is captured in this poem?
I think, well, not in terms of subject matter, but I do see that, I think over the past few years, the increasing use of legalistic terms in the poems. And sometimes, you know, if it's used to for a certain intended effect, like to maybe alienate the reader in certain respects, then that's fine. But then I have to like second guess myself to see whether, or can I use a more appropriate term? Because the problem with legalese is that it's not very evocative. But for this particular one, I think in terms of witness and the idea of, you know, not criminalization under the criminal code, but criminalization in terms of pointing the finger, in terms of saying you're the one to blame for my catharsis. Yeah, I think that is definitely, you know, a legal dynamic to it.
Yeah, I think in this case you actually may be playing the roles of both the advocates, the judge, as well as the jury. Thank you so much, Gerald. That was really an insight. Thank you. Yeah. Now we have Grace, and Grace has written a thriller, Murder on the Train. Sounds like Agatha Christie's book, isn't it? Grace, it's all yours.
Hi everyone, it's so good to be here today. I'm so honored to, recite my poem. It's my first time, so I'm a bit nervous. I originally wrote this poem as a diary entry on my way to work in the train when I was working a 9-to-5 job, and I wrote it while observing the working population of Singapore on my daily commute and every morning. And I noticed that some of the middle-aged adults seemed to be burnt out, and I guess they seem to be worn out, and it got me thinking about the effects of being stuck in a rat race for for presumably decades and being oblivious to their own unhappiness as well as like doing nothing to change it. So I guess this poem, Murder on the Train, I position myself as a witness to their murder, I guess the murder of their hopes and dreams. So, Murder on the Train. You see, thousands of people die in the morning, and I witnessed that in the train cabins. The stifling stench of decaying corpse assaulted my senses greatly as the doors opened to their mundane existence, packed in close proximity. I saw some sunken, middle-aged faces with youth sucked up from their souls, men and women trudging in formal attires, stuck in an endless scroll. They were once so full of youth and vigor, reserves of energy stored for bravery, yet everything was stolen in toil and labor by the chains of corporate slavery. Now, if you think my description crude, might I add I was there, myself include, and will soon be on the end of my own sympathy had I not got out, done things differently. Our resemblance to a pack of sardines is laughable and so heart-wrenching. The rat race has shrunk our dreams and memes into a sight of plain homogeneity. Suddenly, a screeching loud and clear sounded through the train, dear oh dear. Each and every Singaporean dream emerged, a confluence of desires scrambling to diverge. These screams from souls, blood-curdling in nature, climaxed to a volume voicing noble desires. They stood oblivious, how could they not hear? I forgot their souls had long expired. The train came to a stop and we flooded out of the cabin. The knot in my chest loosened, and without realizing that I was holding my breath in, I finally drew in air.
Thank you, Grace. That was, I would say that actually touched your honor somewhere. Okay, face it, you are a young professional, a young creative at that, right? So what gave you the idea, other than seeing all these lifeless souls on the train, to write something like this that is so yeah, emblematic of people my age and generation?
I acknowledge that it's a bit morbid, but I wrote this poem when I was working, like I said, a 9-to-5 job, and I don't think at that time, I don't think I was satisfied with my career. I found it very stifling, actually. So it was mundane for me, and I did not feel like I'm doing work of value. So it might be me imposing my standards on the people around me, but I guess it was sort of like a release, a catharsis of a deeper yearning inside of me that wanted something more, that wanted something more than just dealing with bread and butter issues, but viewing career as an area of my life where I would read true meaning and satisfaction. And I guess like it's not just the people I observed around me, it's also like my colleagues and the things that they told me when I was working with them. Things like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't know I'm still doing this. And it just got me thinking, and maybe I'm naturally a more like philosophical person, but yeah, it like by putting it to paper, it actually serves as a tangible reminder of my enlightenment as a fresh graduate. And ultimately, it's a call to, I guess, myself, like to take charge of my decision. And it's not to like judge anyone, but it's more of kind of like a hope for anyone. I mean, it's like a hope in the middle of a morbid poem, who wishes to think more deeply about their choices in life instead of like blindly following the crowd in a society that rewards conformity.
Yeah, I would say that at the bottom of it all, right, when you come to the final endpoints of your poem, probably the one word that we are searching for is that as you look at this poem and inspect it, you feel relief, right? That you're not living this life of the mob who's actually going through all this Yeah. So some of the things I can relate to, like when I look in the mirror and I see sunken eyes in the morning, yeah, I can see that. I suppose a lot of us can actually replace the title of your poem with our names in it. In fact, yeah. But thank you so much, because you actually brought about a consensus of sorts, so that many of us who may be living parts of it through your poem, we can see that it's not a solo journey. And in fact, this helps us to, hey, reach the get that, hey, I'm not alone in this. Everybody is facing a little bit of tension here and there. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's not to shame anyone, but it's just to like provoke more thought. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, thank you. And now we have Sean, and Sean's poem is entitled Moving Day. Sean, your turn.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's really humbling to be able to present my poem to everyone. And I really appreciated hearing all the thought-provoking and powerful poems that have been shared so far. Yeah, maybe just to share a little bit about myself, I will bring you through my experience with poetry, and hopefully you can get a better understanding of who I am and where this poem is coming from. So I'm a university undergraduate, and I've always been drawn to very intense and introspective poems. So consequently, most of my poems feel very heavy too. And that sort of filled me with a lot of angst and frustration, to the point that I stopped writing for a year because I was quite done with with the work I had written. Moving Day is one of the only poems that I have written that felt light, and there's still some sense of dissatisfaction, I think, that you can hear in the poem, but it was very important to me that it never felt spiteful or resentful. And ultimately, what I think I achieved was a sense of release and a catharsis. So without further ado, I hope that you will enjoy my poem.
Please go ahead.
Moving Day. Do not open. The child's handwriting on the cardboard box glares at me as I lift the lid of what has since become an ornament in my room. In it, I find the puzzled personae of my past poems, strangers, strange creatures, which have gnawed on the strings and tattered the pages, screeching in unpolished rhymes which yearn to be yawped. Surrounded by faceless walls, now vacant without my doodles, I feel the heat on my cheeks as the words of a child boom in the room and take hold. The untattered critters gallop from stanza to stanza and leap into the white beyond.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
And there are two main questions I actually would like to pitch to you, so that, for the benefit of our listeners and audience as well, as to how a poet actually has, in his writing, a kind of a process that we follow through, right? So first of all, you mentioned that you actually used to write quite a bit before you reached a creative drought of sorts. So at the time, at your peak, how many poems were you churning out on average?
Okay. So I remember distinctly in like April 2020, I sort of challenged myself to write as much as possible. And I ended up writing almost one poem every day for that month, because that was my birthday is in April, and I wanted to write as much as I could before I turned a certain age. So yeah, that's the peak of my creativity, I guess.
Right. So you actually wrote, dare I say, 100 poems in that year?
I don't think it's 100, but it was like maybe around like more than 50.
Okay, sure. That's already a reach by any measure. So second question to you then is, you mentioned in your bio also that you attended our Catharsis Poetry Workshop recently, right? And it actually gave you new insights, so that it challenged you to want to write. So perhaps you can share with us, what new insights did you get? Because you have already been writing pre-workshop, right? And you've been writing quite a fair bit yourself. So what new insights could we possibly have actually stirred in you?
Yes, so I attended the Catharsis Poetry Workshop that was actually conducted by you, Elijah, quite recently. I remember very distinctly that a key question that you posed to us was, who are you? And it was very important that we understood our relationship with the audience. And so in this poem, I was wondering who I was writing to. And I always feel that I kind of am speaking into a void. And this is the first poem that I felt that I was really addressing someone, and that someone was myself. And I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but for me, when I talk to myself in like my head, I tend to be a bit pessimistic or a bit, negative. And I wanted to treat myself more tenderly, or treat myself, with a certain respect and a sort of peace, I would say. And this is the end product of that, in that I recognize the importance of talking to myself in a way that wasn't, like I mentioned earlier, spiteful or resentful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's true that we really grow and mature, and I think the process of maturity allows us to understand ourselves that little bit better, isn't it? So writing also helps us to actually peel away some of the layers as well. Thank you so much, John.
Thank
and
you.
Next up, we have Aliyah, and Aliyah is writing and entitled a very ephemeral poem. It's entitled Amira's Illusion.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. So before I start, a little bit about myself. I'm 16 years old. I have been writing poetry ever since I was 8 years old. So it's something that kind of comes naturally to me, I guess, because you could say it flows in my genes, because my great-grandfather was a Persian poet and my grandfather is a Bengali poet. So, you know, following in their footsteps, I'm an English poet. When I was 13, I actually published my own book of poems. It's called Random Stars. So yeah, a little bit about the poem that I'm reading today. It's something that I wrote 2 years ago when I was 14 years old. And I remember having felt this like overwhelming sense of frustration at that time. And it's something that I still feel to this day. It's just this pressure of having to conform to the one particular label that society inflicts on us. And, you know, anytime we do something that's remotely beyond the bounds of the label that we're given, it's considered to be out of character. So essentially what I'm trying to say through this poem is that it's not out of character. Our character is not something that can be defined by one label or one adjective, you know, be it the mature one. You know, there are times that I can be the not mature one, the immature one. So yeah, Amira's Illusion. I am not one, but many, overlapping voices, contradicting judgments. It's not just noise nor unnecessary commotion, not my subconscious with split personalities. There's not one, but many of me, so why choose to ignore it? I'm not one, but many, fragments of maturity unevenly distributed. For once, I'll let the immature one speak, and I'll pay heed without cutting off its sentences. It's not just noise inside my head. It's the suppressed voices as I've deemed. But who am I without their screams? I'm not one, but many. If you choose to believe the mirror, know it lies through its teeth. The mirror knows more than what it shows. The mirror hides more than what it reveals. The deceptive tricksters, such is the illusion of the mirror that makes me believe there's only one of me. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really a mystical and mysterious poem. And you chose the metaphor of a mirror. It's like, how long have you dwelt on this prospect of using a mirror as the basis and anchor for your poem?
It's something that kind of came as I was writing the poem. It was a very cathartic moment. I just started off with one line in my head that had been echoing for a long time when I was 14, and I was living under this pressure of having to be just one kind of label. And then as I was writing it, I realized how the mirror is something that makes us see a false impression of us. It gives us only one image of us, and we fail to realize that there are so many faces under that mask. There's so many voices in that head that we cannot see. The mirror doesn't show them all. So yeah.
Okay, and how has the process of writing this poem actually how did it help you in terms of peeling off away some of those layers?
Well, poetry always helps me express myself and understand and articulate what I'm thinking about. Because in reality, I'm not a very expressive person. I don't like to talk about my feelings or show my feelings. So every time I write a poem and I can see the finished result, it's like I understand myself a bit more, and it's really cathartic for me in that sense. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Aliyah, all the best in your continued journey as a poet. Really thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jonathan, and Jonathan actually was our past winner last year. And Jonathan, he wrote Logbook. Jonathan, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Elijah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan. It's a wonderful privilege to be able to read my poem alongside all of you, to hear about your writing processes, your thinking processes, And it's really wonderful to be able to bear these gifts to the broader Singaporean literary community as well. I've been writing poetry for a long time. As Elijah mentioned, I had the good fortune of having a poem shortlisted last year as well. And I think the great appeal of catharsis is that as a concept, as an idea, it's so sensuous. It imbues the everyday with that sense of the tragic, with that sense of the dramatic, especially because that one singular epiphanic moment of catharsis can, germinate, cause so many wonderful poems to germinate as we all reflect and think about that point of emotional, psychological release. So this poem logbook that I wrote is actually a reflection on my process of writing in my diary or journaling every day, and I hope you enjoy it. Logbook. In silence, where the air seems to settle to dust, each slight of the day, past felt and held, every glance or chunk of text fixating the mind, like a heel dug into grey matter, the swirl of overlaying chatter, choric in its pulse, brought through the prizing of a pen or now thumbprint, an inverse speech act, calling into being that elusive minute of peace, to type and type and type until all comes into a kind of stillness, the selfsame vision beginning to blur, until fingers buckle beneath a love that presses to bear and endure all things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Maybe we can just try to take a little into your writing process and how your mind works actually. Now, you mentioned that you actually wrote poems regularly, and you also keep a journal, and you have been faithful in doing that as well. So does it feed off each other, these two processes, both keeping a daily journal as well as writing poetry constantly?
I would say that, yes, I think in my life they play a mutually generative role, a mutually fruitful role, especially because a lot of the poems that I write stem from a place of prayer or reflection or introspection. And the process of journaling for me is also an act of actively recollecting and recording my memories. It helps me to kind of grasp with precision everything that has gone on in the days, or the day that has passed rather. And sometimes, a lot of it is recollecting certain sensations, emotions, or thoughts, or it can even be something as banal and surprisingly difficult as remembering what I ate for lunch and for dinner.
Right.
And I think a lot of that does provide the raw material for my poetry, and to the extent that experience provides the raw material for a lot of different kinds of poetic expression. And the act of journaling for me allows me to kind of play that role of foraging and gathering memories that might eventually transform into a poem.
Thank you. I think it has given us a real good insight as to the plethora and the plethora as well of all the different kind of influences and feeding that one can have in order to write some poetry. Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan. And we have Sajjad with us, and Sajjad is reading to us his poem, My Cave, Prison of Existence.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Sajjad Parmar. My day job is working as an HR professional. I've been writing for about the past 25 years or so, but this is my first time. You could probably guess my age by the amount of time I've been writing. So I kind of get what Grace has been talking about. I have the same observation, even though I'm from that same generation, stuck in a corporate job. But it's a good observation nonetheless. I think writing for me is a very balancing act. I'm an extremely ridiculously optimistic person, and the title of my poem, as you can see, is probably the most depressing one probably we have today. So it's a balance for me in terms of the observations I have of life as I get older, the pain and suffering I see around the world, and I'm sure all of you have seen a lot more in the last 18 months or so. And I would say that the title of the poem, which is Prison of Existence, is a balance, right? So you think about the fact that we have what we call free will, the ability to do what we want to do, how we want to do it. But at the same time, if you reflect upon the concept of a prison where you're limited by physical, emotional, and spiritual restrictions, in many ways, to me, that same applies in life in general, where we're limited by what we can do physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So this poem is basically a reflection on a point in time where I guess I had a strong feeling in terms of the restrictions we have, the pains and sufferings we live with, and the pains and suffering that we see around. So yeah.
Mhm.
Stop at the door and wait. Run into me and stop. Run into me and stop like the day eases into the night. This room waits. It waits to welcome, to show intrepidation. The prison of existence, this room, my cave, my own prison. Can you hear the screams, the silent screams? I keep shouting endlessly. Do you drink my bleeding eyes, my transparent blood flowing boundlessly? Tangled chains of existence, the blurred pictures, disappearing words, end of the world tales. Am I a reflection of myself or something else? The mirror keeps asking. Run into me, my love, run into me, my love. Look, let me look at you and wait. Let me look at you and wait like the scorched earth waits for rainfall and longs. Existence demands punishment, burning of the flesh and suffering of the soul. I kneel in this cave while the prison devours me, my lofty aspirations broken and amputated. I keep easing away into annihilation. The darkness of this place seems so alive. The moistness of the walls reminds me of thirst. The hardness of the ground, like the ambition of the mind. The ceiling, as if the stars have come down to touch me. Hold me tight and feel. Hold me tight and feel. Let me live just once. Live like a star about to explode, dying but fully aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Sajjad. And you left us with a preface of why you write and how you have actually benefited from this process all along, and that juxtaposition again of being both somebody who is really positive in life, and yet you're writing something that's not so positive apparently on the surface, right? So when you move from here, it's like, are you going to continue writing in this vein, or is it going to change?
To be honest, most of what I write is really on the spot, and it takes me less than 10 minutes to pen down either a page or two. So it's really like an inspiration, and it's usually not this depressing generally. So it's a lot about, like, I'll write about my grandmother, I'll write about my father, but it's like a moment of inspiration. It could be something like the gray hair that my father has, and it will inspire me something to do, to write something. And so, but I think, like I said, it depends on the point of inspiration. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of very positive inspiration in the last, I would say, 18 months or so. So a lot of that has come down, is probably not as depressing, but it's still a reflection of the challenges everybody is going through. Hopefully that will change.
Thank you, Sajjad. Right. Next up, we have Heidi, and Heidi comes to us with Mariposa, otherwise Butterfly.
Thank you everyone for this is a humble recognition that I was included in here. I was very surprised because I didn't think through about it, and when the news break, it's like, wow, I'm there. So I will tell you a little bit about me. So my name is Heidi. I've been working here for 4 years as a migrant domestic helper, and poetry for me gives me my space to comprehend myself. And this become my outlet to express feelings where I can only imagine how will I convey what I'm trying to say when I couldn't show. And this is a big help on me to strengthen my emotional and mental stability being far away from my real home.
Mhm.
So this Mariposa, I will tell you a little bit about this. So it's like this is an emerging transformation of a living thing as well as humans. So how universe has brought us to life, how we live, how we struggle, and how we strive for the better. And this is the real journey of everybody. How we deal with biggest failure of our life and get through over it. So there is an essence of catharsis that was happening in front of our eyes, and it was deeply engraved in our hearts. So here we go. Mariposa. How long did you endure in the darkness, trapped in the isolation of your cocoon? I was imagining you, how you look like to be, my darling. How long I will be waiting. I'm dying to see you. I'm dying to see your colors, the brightness of a rainbow. Yet there were no sun rays, Mariposa. Yet there weren't any lights. I searched for you in the vastness of the blooming garden. And here comes your hope. I saw you cracking from your shell. My heart is jumping with glee, a chance to rise up, Mariposa. Stage your beauty, my lovely. There is life, my love. There are lovely rainbow colors, a blazing rainbow across the skyline, a meaningful quest of your gem to be witnessed by the world. Oh, my love, Mariposa, come out, spread your tiny wings. Your amazing proof creation, an emerging transformation, a metamorphosis of beauty. Your loveliness is hailed from something that has fallen apart. You taste every flowers, you dip every teardrops, you flatters, and you flap your wings. Spread the colors of the wind. Ride every breeze of the flowers together with them. We will fly up, up, up. You will lift up high. But I felt the dread that I don't like to know. Your lifetime doesn't last under a summer sky. My happiness to see your color flies. My heart desires not to know this awful reality. It was a front facade of my shadow to comprehend the fear of sorrow that you only live 2 weeks in a row. But I am happily enjoying your gift of colors until you gracefully dies. But it was never bid goodbye. It was then the image transformation, the gift of coming out again with our best version. Thank you.
Thank you for that hauntingly beautiful poem and reading. It's really touching.
Thank you.
What gave you the idea for writing about Mariposa?
I wrote this long time. There is a page, Arts in Me, which is like from migrant writers of Singapore, and it's like most of domestic workers, helpers, and some locals are there. So I just wrote this. I just wrote it like this, but and posted it there, just like that. But after like few months, we have this poetry inclined ladies also, which literary inclined. So we did some lessons like personification and all those devices. And then I fine-tuned this a little bit and just posted again and just leave it like that. But one time in the middle of, I was talking to a best friend, and in the middle of the night, I'm just ranting like how was my day was going. And it's like, and that person said that, do you think you can do something to come out? And then I remember this poem that, yeah, I have wrote so many like motivation, and it's like coming out for your own best version. Why I can do that with myself? So I just read it once again and just feel the emotions. And then I saw Catharsis like around March, and just drafted it again and sent without thinking. That's why I'm so surprised that, yeah, it's a very humble recognition to be here.
Thank you, Heidi. And I would encourage you to continue writing, because what you've done is actually really contributed a lot to your own community as well as to, Singaporeans at large. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm very pleased to at this time introduce Amber Cho, and her poem is Silkworm. Now, Amber was also a shortlisted winner last year. So Amber, please, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I would first like to begin with my experience with poetry. My first poem was written when I was 12 in school. I was seeing the clouds, yeah. And from there, I just wrote something stupid, yeah. But then my work developed into something that really characterized and shaped the person that I am today. That was like my catharsis in a sense, yeah. I shall begin.
Right.
Us humans are clumsy creatures with pale skin and death white knuckles, falling over, then crying, laughing. Silvered cocoons, two ivory poles laid side by side, an ode to a love born. Our hearts filled to the brim and salted on the edges, tipping over and spilling carefully. Us humans, fingers limp and eyes lymphatic, our hands carrying the corpses of our past loves. We write out sacrosanct memories on the blue backs of a butterfly and kiss them goodbye for their next flight. Sorry, bloodshot tear stains escorted out by a pretty smile. I'm reaching out and falling short, my fingers wilting at the weight, each tear slipping slowly down graceless mulberry leaves. You abscond with my mildewed heart, clutched, jumpy in your maladroit fingers. I will always be reminded of your gaze, the half-bellied monster, the moss-eyed seraph, ravenous yet reticent, and I tremble. The soft glimmer of your lucid eyes betrayed the poet and the dreamer. Everything we love eventually changes, and time only blanches the silkworm raw. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I like the part where you mentioned between the poet and the dreamer. Are they the same? Are they one and the same, really?
I think a lot of the time, it is what our dreams do for us that make us the poet, in a sense. Yeah. If I didn't have the capability to dream, to be as ambitious and everything, I wouldn't be a poet.
That's it.
Like, yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship for me, at least. And I'm sure that many other poets also experience this in their process of writing and in their own journey for their own catharsis. Yeah.
And your writing is, well, basically it's captured in the metaphor and image of a silkworm then.
Yes, I was very inspired by a moth. Actually, recently I raised a moth. I found a caterpillar in my salad, so I decided I was gonna watch it grow. And within that 2 months, also, it became like this fat little ugly thing. But then it grew wings, and one day I just let it go. And actually, just watching it poop all day and everything has taught me a lot. And seeing it grow and change and finally leave me, that was its catharsis, but it's taught me so much about my own journey as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that. And I didn't plan
Thank
this.
you.
I didn't know beforehand, but your poem and your experience that you just shared with us, coming just right after what Heidi has shared with us, you know, and her Mariposa.
Yeah.
Transformation and the journey is really something. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And next we have Alka, and Alka is sharing with us the Imprinted Tome.
Good evening, everyone. I've been listening to so many wonderful poems by poets and writers from diverse backgrounds and all ages. I'm also grateful to Elijah and the Poetry Festival of Singapore for giving me an opportunity to be a part of PFS Catharsis. First, a little bit about myself. I started to write poetry around 2 years back. And I didn't consciously plan to be a poet. Lately, poetry has been driving me. And recently, I have been published in an anthology by the Asian Literary Society. I'm going to share a poem titled The Imprinted Tome. It is based on purging our inner, and I have used words as a metaphor to describe the catharsis transformation. So here is the poem. The Imprinted Tome. Marshmallows of colors of life, bobbing in the whirlpool within, longing to pour out onto a blank paper. But words, an impediment to the feelings within, limited in vocab to convey the innate vastness, stuck in the quicksand of societal learnings, somehow reach the shore. But then the barricades are strong. Gradually, the words go within, swallow and sink at the bottom under the weight of earthly norms. Presuming to be dead, not to rise again, they resign to their wordless destiny. Over the years, as other words get a chance to pour out, an empty space is created. The dead words wake up from their slumber, glide joyfully in the calm ocean within, lighter in the knowing that destiny can be rewritten. They flow seamlessly, filling in the remaining pages of the transfigured book of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alka. That's really beautiful. Huh? Yeah, it's I would say that is bringing this to a whole new level. It's almost metaphysical, and it is mixing both the spiritual reality of writing itself. How much of it really impacts your life, the act of writing itself in that sense?
As I already shared, that I never consciously planned to write poetry. But when I started to write, it helped me give a clear perspective about a lot of things that I was holding inside me. And as I penned down words, I felt lighter, and it helped me heal and know myself better. Because I feel like we are not what we believe ourselves to be. Sometimes in our life, what we do is we take on a lot of conditioning from the society, if I say so. And like suppose introvert. Some people say, oh, I'm an introvert, because somebody somewhere in their childhood might have said something to them, and those words, as a child, doesn't have the ability to discern if it's the truth or not. They start believing them to be true. And humans, as such, their natural state is very different. And when we consciously become aware of this fact, so the process to undo everything that we are not somewhere starts or sets in.
Yeah, I think that that reminds us of what one of our winners actually mentioned earlier on about being labeled, right? And
Yeah.
how we are labeled by circumstances and even those closest to us as well. So
Yes,
thank you so
please.
much. I think that
Yeah.
it really helps us to have that vision and that view that as we write, we're actually writing and rewriting ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alka. Okay, next up we have Keith, and Keith is sharing with us his poem Blind Speech.
Hi, thanks everyone. I am very grateful to be given the opportunity to share my work at this poetry festival alongside such talented writers like all of you. Hi. And the poem I entered is titled Blind Stitch. It's a sestina about patterns of abuse. It is about the dangerous blurred line between events of trauma bonding and moments of emotional catharsis. And I shall begin. Sorry. Lost in dreams of beginning again, limbs in bed lying twisted, edges frayed by a long-forgotten promise to tie no knots, on tightrope stretched thin as thread, masquerading as a harmless loop. A tear-jerking reel on loop, coaxing out cathartic tears again. Between scenes one must skillfully thread, awaiting a happy yet twisted conclusion, setting aside heartstrings in knots to briefly forget endless repetition is infinitely long. A throwaway gesture after so long is an unsurprising turn in a familiar loop, of having two entanglements replace undone knots, enduring winter for brief summers again. Through the seasons, a tree grew twisted, wispy foliage a puppet's thread. Fingers bleed from work by needle and thread. Eyes dried out from stitching hours long. To wring out shameful wetness, the fabric is twisted, unworkable heartstring tucked away in a loop, to someday come undone again, when neglect has shriveled it up in knots. Anticipation, butterflies and a stomach in knots. Benign strings evolve to cut like razor thread. Familiar comfort, anxiety mistaken for excitement again. A line blurred for far too long, contorted to fit through loop after loop, emerging warped and twisted. Around another's little finger it is agony to be twisted, a sorry scarf of skin and solace tied in knots. Cursed to see beauty through the morbid loop. Exhausted yet tethered by a tenuous thread, to an impossibility where those gone will not be long, and two intricately hopeless strings can begin again. With every loop the tapestry grew increasingly twisted, a lone, weeping weaver working again to fix impossible knots, within a hopeful chrysalis thread for a lifetime too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Let's address the elephant in the room. Why a sestina?
Why a sestina? So, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it was this poem is about patterns of abuse and emotional manipulation, really. And so I was thinking of a form that could help me. For me, I use formal poetry because it helps me churn things out. Ironically, like although the constraints of the form ironically help me write easier about things that are difficult to write about because the words are there. I just need to fill in the blanks, and that's how that's how the sestina helped me. And why I chose the sestina was also because the pattern, the way it repeats, it helps to convey the sense of the repetition there and the sense of duress and like discomfort, in having that kind of forced repetition that I think is quite central to Blind Stitch. And yes, that's why sestina.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is albeit tongue-in-cheek, is because many times people, especially they associate modern poetry and things like catharsis and streams of consciousness to some extent with just loose forms or not even having any form at all. But I think that's besides the point. It can be with form, it can be modern with no form as well, right? It's open to all in terms of interpretation. I've yet to come across a sonnet depicting catharsis as its theme. Maybe you can try that next year.
Sure.
A Shakespearean sonnet would be nice. Okay, thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for that. And now I'm happy to introduce a three-time winner of Catharsis, and she is none other than Dr. Sarah Florian. She'll be sharing with us a poem, Grandparents. Sarah, please.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Elijah. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight and to share this poem with so many people. I had the privilege, as you said, of being shortlisted in 2019 and in 2020, so I'm really grateful. On top of teaching, I also write and I love painting. So one of my poems illustrated by one of my paintings has been published as cover art by Literary Magazine in the US in May 2021. Originally, I'm from Venice in Italy, but I've been living in Singapore for so long that I feel Singaporean too. One thing that Singapore and Venice have in common is that they're both islands. And in the poem, I refer to these themes, home and belonging and islands. But mainly this poem was written to commemorate my grandparents. My grandfather passed away in August last year and my grandmother in March this year. And I was unable to say goodbye as I have not been back home for 2 years. Mourning from afar and in isolation has been incredibly tough, but in this land that has adopted me, I have managed to learn to feel love beyond the physical presence. So this is my poem, Grandparents. How can I live now, knowing that I never said farewell? A year of suffering for you and for me, but now, at least, you're free. I'm still here instead, in a stepmother country which loves me and I love back. I'm still here, with tears trickling down a rift in my soul. Every time I left, I hugged you for the last time. And I had to make do with it, for I had understood that every time would have been the last. I learned this from you because once you were emigrants like me, you knew the hard work, the pain in living, the laceration of losing a 3-year-old daughter to meningitis. So how could I be selfish and ask to see you one more time? My stepmother is cuddling me to sleep. She tells me it's okay. On this island, the cracks in my heart are crevices filled in by the impelling water of monsoons, and cracked apart by thunders. For islands are like us humans, scattered and grouped in archipelagos of wisdom. And now, as your ashes are scattered in the sea, you both are hugging me, and I can feel you again.
Thank you, Sarah. That was beautiful. And Sarah, you have something to share with us as well, right?
Yes, if I may share something with you, on 7 and 8 of September, there will be an event at Esplanade called Vivaldi's Four Seasons. It's a concert by Red Dot Baroque, a local ensemble inspired by Baroque music. They have commissioned me to write a poem in which I compare and contrast my homeland, Venice, and my adopted home, Singapore. Please check it out on Facebook.
Thank you. And I think it's really of interest and note to actually mention that, you in that sense, you actually are not a Singaporean. You have come such a long way from home and you have made a new home here. And that definitely has impacted your writing and your process of coming up with words and joining them together into a poem. Am I right also to say that English is not your first language?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how you can actually craft and you can join all these things up together with your feelings and also your thoughts and your yearnings as well. Yeah, so I think you really have a lot to share with us next time, and how you actually are moving on into weaving poetry together with music, right?
Yes, that's right. I like to experiment and to find that linking point between one art and another. So I love painting, I love music, and I love writing, of course. So that this sort of synesthesia that I constantly explore in my writing, also because there's this kind of continuum in the writing process that gradually relates, the feelings and ideas to sounds, to what you see, to what you smell. That, of course, a lot of the beautiful poems that all of you shared tonight showed. Right? So this is what is important in art, in the sense of a cathartic process.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Sarah.
Thank you, Elijah.
And now we'll have Candace. Candace is going to share with us Relief, the Relief to Relief. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Candace, over to you.
Hi everyone, so I'm Candace. So for my poems, I generally like to make them rhyme. And just now actually when it was mentioned that it's important and helpful to detach yourself from the poem and not make it personal, I really feel that that's something I need to learn, because I think most of the time I put a lot of myself and my own emotions in. And there's definitely a lot of more balance that can be struck in that. And just now, Sean also mentioned about how he feels that through poetry, he feels like he's talking to himself. I feel like this is quite similar to my case also. I feel that it's a lot of things is a conversation that I have myself in my own head. And there's some sort of paradox in terms of what I want in life, whether I want to be more career oriented or have a more chill aspect of life. So as a finance student, poetry is really something that allows me to express myself and gives a lot more room for creativity and imagination, given that finance is very quantitative, qualitative. Sometimes the Excel sheets get a bit too much. So poetry is a really nice point of relief that I can push everything out there. And another point about the anonymity of internet, I really like that because I feel that sometimes when I overexpress myself, I can always just blame it on the fact that, oh yeah, it's just a poem. I don't actually feel that way. Although sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. So it keeps the mysterious vibes there. And yeah, for this one, I just wrote it in the middle of the night when I was a bit too tired to do work. So I guess here goes. So relief, the relief to relief. I found relief when I was a kid, slightly over 2 or 3, with not much needs except for my simple love for the sea. Fascinated by tiny beads, even if they weren't really the key. I enjoyed planting seeds, even if they didn't grow into trees. Still a kid, but now a little taller, around age 4, 5, 6, with a little more needs and a huge sprinkle of greed. Grew out of beads and seeds, wanted toys and tricks. But amidst the confusion, I found relief in silver lining griefs. Finally primary school, but still a kid from 7 to 12. Emotional needs shoved into the deepest, darkest shelves. Sinking in extra classes, all the things we do to ourselves. But between lessons, I daydream about Christmas and elves. In secondary school from 13 to 16, transition decisions. What do you want to do in the future? What is your life mission? Where do you see yourself a few years from now? What is your vision? Yet I found the calm in the storm, so I stayed quietly still and tried to listen. College came with big decisions for someone only 17. Admittedly stressful, with exams and tests that felt really mean. But even then, in small little moments, I still found joy within. I scribbled words that never left my mouth, only things I have seen. Legal at 18, still felt like a kid, but no longer looked like it. Partied too hard, I lost track of time, oh, all that vodka that hit. Ran too far, straight and lost, I couldn't see where I would fit. But ceiling fans comforted me, even when it felt like a swirling pit. At university, where dreams are built for someone at 19. But why was I so scared of almost everyone and everything? The curated nurturing in classrooms were highly intimidating. But frantic toilet crying breaks made a little less frightening. 2020 spared no one, but for someone at 20, I was quite done. People left too terribly quickly for me to be able to trust anyone. But through all the pain, I still rose up every day just like the sun. Looking back at those funny times, I'd say that it was a good run. Now at 21, I see the life that awaits. Just breathe. It is now that I realize that above reliefs, they were reliefs. Comfort amidst the constant pain of life, yet hopeful mist. Paradox is everywhere, but I am grateful for cathartic bliss. Yeah, so that's
Thank you. Thank you, Candice. And I actually found this very relieving, sort of in a sort of peculiar sort of way, because it actually captures, you know, in a snapshot, the chronology of many of our early stages of life, where we actually climb that academic ladder, and also that social fitting in of sorts. Yeah. But thank you so much for that. That really helps us to relieve a little bit of our life. Thank you. And now we'll have Ahmad, and Ahmad is sharing with us Rising Up an Escalator, I Will Make a Transition. And Ahmad's backdrop is extremely telling. Ahmad, over to you.
Hi everyone, thank you, Elijah. It feels good to be among talented people from diverse background. Basically, I'm an introvert person. I have difficulty to express myself in person. So I find poem or poetry is a way to express myself in words. Usually I write in Malay, but back in 2019, myself and a couple of friends embarked in a project to translate some of our poems in Malay to English. Then from then on, I find that there is some interesting characteristic in English poem and Malay. They have a different approach and different form of words to convey certain meanings. So when this Catharsis Open Call, I try to write a poem in English. So just to practice and my writing skills in English. This poem actually reflect the reality of life that is often temporary in nature, and it's just a level and hue of transition before success is achieved with hope, vision, and wisdom. Please bear with me because this is my first time reading a poem in English. Rising up an escalator, I will make a transition. Riding up the level and hue of transition, this escalator will lead to a position, giving space to insight and directions. Will our vision and dreams be found while moving ahead sans wisdom? This escalator surely turns around our positions. Deep within this seemingly complex life, absolutely without wise consideration with time, the pursuit is just a trend, some certainty of a strong desire. In the midst of this seemingly complex life, ideally we should break through our own benchmarks, hanging on, sense compromising in acquiring of certainly the selection is somewhat satisfaction when accomplished dreams have come true. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmad. And I would just like to add here that, you know, Ahmad has been very humble. Ahmad is a multi-published poet, and he has been awarded many times, you know, commendation medals, etc. And also he's a founding member of some of the literary movements in Malay, right, in Singapore.
Yeah.
So Ahmad, how difficult was it to actually pen a poem in English and to even recite it? This is your first time reciting in English, and we are so honored to have you reciting your first English poem in public.
Yes, because as I said, English is not my mother tongue. So definitely, although in school we learn English, but to convey a feeling in words, especially in English, we have to, you know, sort of switch mode in English. So we have to think in the nature of the language itself. So there are certain things that I'm thinking in Malay, but when I write in English, I have to switch mode to English context. So that's the difficulty and the challenge.
Yeah, and you can't really just sing out the poem in Malay first and then do a translation, right? It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah, correct. So basically, when do translation, it's not really a translation. So what come out later is actually a transcreation. It come out words that convey a different meaning from the original context.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice term, and I think you should write an essay on that, on transcreation. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, thank you so much, Ahmad, for giving us an insight into really one of your works. It's really nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and now we'll have Sarah Zafirah, and poem is creotically entitled "Smell." Sarah, over to you.
Hi everyone. So just to introduce my poem "Smell," I kind of wanted to write something that was a bit more lighthearted and didn't really fit with like my own personal definition of catharsis, which is kind of like a bit more tragic. So my poem is a bit more about young love, and the reason why it's entitled "Smell" is because the prompt that I was given by one of my teachers was to write about a certain smell. And in this poem, I decided to write about the smell of somebody that you love, and all the different smells that kind of coagulate to become that person. So my poem, "Smell." She always smelled warm and balmy and good. Like an old book I cracked the spine of 2 days ago, like East Coast and the smell of dust in the theater. She smelled like all my favorite things. And even though I had sinus problems, I could tell she had a faint scent of medicine because she took so much. She smelled like sweat most of the time because school was hot and it radiated off her, but I loved it like a heater I curled up to, or like a well-loved pillow. I loved her bed the most because it was rolling in the days she couldn't get out of it. It was surrounded by space when she could. And her skin was aromatherapy itself, the scent of shampoo dancing on her neck. I still don't know what she used, but it was amazing. I could walk into a crowd and know her by smell alone. I would have given anything to immortalize the divine stench of it all, best in the crook of her neck. The air around her etched into stone memory where nothing else stayed. The detergent on her clothes was one I loved the most. She smelled like home, and that was truly all that mattered. The future bright and floral and pleasant, fragrant with budding plants and the reek of the dozens of stinky cats we'd have. And the house in the Italian countryside, aglow and mild with summer. The sweat dripping off her back and soaking her clothes in the heat. Good dirt and soil on her hands mixed with lignin from the old books in the library, wedding bands and the tang of rare earth where she cupped my cheek, where every smell was honest and true, sincere and frank as she was. Everything around us gently tempered with honor and virtue. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I actually chose your poem because it has that raw quality of being very, very honest to your senses and to yourself as well, because some of the things that we take for granted are the things that we actually are blessed with. And the five senses that we have, we do not know that we need them so much and that we rely on them so much until we lose them. And I think COVID actually did rob people of their smell to some extent, right? And the things that really touch us would come to us through these five senses, especially when we were very young. And smell, as you rightly pointed out in your poem, is definitely one of them. Yeah. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now we'll have Evan Tambu, and he's going to share with us Little Soldier Boy.
Hi. So I'll just do a quick introduction about my poem. When I was writing this, it was actually taken from another poem which I had written, but I felt like it didn't really apply to the theme of catharsis because it's very focused on colors and a different theme. But I managed to adapt it, and I think it turned out a little bit better. So I'll just start reading it then.
Mm-hmm.
Little soldier boy, dragging his feet through bloody hell. For his country and God he fights, but none are worth the toil. Brave soldier boy, crawling with eyes burning and swelled. Look alive, soldiers, on your right, panting through pain and soil. Tired soldier boy, still, drenched in blood against the well. The last of his unit bound tight, his God had killed them all. Poor soldier boy, what a fateful hand to be dealt. A bleeding heart with no other left, a carcass on the floor. Little soldier boy, dragged through the mud, a lifeless finger raised towards the sky, reaching for heaven's doors, begging to raise him up, begging to purge the town of devils, begging to relieve him forevermore. All the soldier boys, to their hells they were sent, piled and burned, their corpses tied. To heaven the flames grasped, but none above met the fire, only those in the village of evil. For country and God the boys fought, but neither cared for their lives, neither mourned or cried, neither knew little soldier boys. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. And what gave you the inspiration to actually write about war? I mean, the imagery of war and soldiers and soldiering. This is very different from typical war poems that we actually come across because, we have not gone through any wars as such. And I know that you're definitely not writing about any war at all in that sense.
So my main inspiration from this was I'm not sure why, but I think I've been watching a lot of videos on the internet about soldiers and their lifestyles and how and some like a historical documentation of what soldiers feel and what they say before they go into a war. And I think there was an operation in Afghanistan done by the US Army, and one of the speeches their commander had before they were sent into the Afghanistan into one of the villages where I think eventually they all died. It was really, really sad, but it was also very interesting. So I just wanted to write something about that to preserve my memory of it. Also, my brothers are currently serving NS, so every day when they come back home, or when they do come back home, they're always complaining about it. So that also gave me a lot of inspiration to write about the military and army.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now we are going to screen a video clip of Cheryl reading to us a poem, Inextricable Glitches and How You Can Learn to Live with Them. Over to you, Ping.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Tan. I am 19 years old, and thank you for recognizing my piece in Catharsis 2021. Before I start reading, I just want to give a little bit of an introduction about myself, as well as some context to my prose poem. So I am a upcoming second-year student at the University of Washington, Seattle, pursuing psychology. And I like to write in my free time, which I have been doing since I was pretty young. And my prose poem this time around is a reflection on my own medical condition, which is scoliosis, which just means that I have a curved spine. So yeah, without further ado, this is Inextricable Glitches and How You Learn to Live with Them. Sometimes there are nights when my own two hands feel foreign, skittering across my keyboard, sliding wrong, like I can't move them the way I want to. Like I input one half thought, only for it to fray into wisps of aborted muscle contractions. My eyes shift haphazardly, perpetually out of focus. I take in a jumble of words, and it registers as just that, a meaningless distribution of letters and spaces, meanings ringing slowly out, petering off into a silence that absorbs and gone. I wash my glasses with warm water and soap, watch the suds trickle down the basin. Solitary water droplets glide off pristine glass lenses. The muscles in my right arm twitch, almost imperceptibly. I stand before my bathroom sink, bare feet just on the edge of cool against pale blue tiles, staring into a soulless mirror that reflects nothing that I wish to see. Am I imagining it, or is it really there? 9 years going on a decade, and still, every second I doubt. The aches, the sores, am I just exaggerating for attention? Am I tricking my own mind into believing the pain is that bad? Am I imagining phantom flares to be real, and not just the spasmic conjurations of a fickle mind? Doubt, doubt, doubt. What is real at this point? Can I really trust my own mind? How much of my being is really, actually, genuinely a byproduct of my spine programmed wrong? Bugs gnawing on sparking copper wires, movement glitched. How much is just a projection of my own faulty, short-circuiting neurons firing at nothing? Imagined stimuli. How much is just nothing, anything, everything? My biopsychology textbook glares back at me under harsh desk lamp light. Nervous system changes could lead to prolonged perceived pain, even in the absence of pain stimuli. What if? What if? Write, see, listen. What if that's me? My hands ache something terrible when I forget to crack the joints. My lower back likes to flare up at will. A space of minimum 15 minutes. A time in which I can only embrace the wood-paneled floor of my bedroom, knuckles clenched white, to the beats of a thrumming pain. I don't have the words in either of the languages my soft palate calls home, to even begin stringing together a description. My right knee favors locking up when I'm walking, when I'm standing. I've taken a humbling greeting with the floor more times than I could ever try to keep track over the years. Yesterday, when I braced the fingertips of my left hand against my neck, I could feel the blood pulsing through my veins, like the pitter-pattering fall of panicked rabbit paws. When I pushed against the blood vessels trembling beneath my scalp, I could feel the dull aches resonating down a meandering path to my ears. And still I turned my palm up, back of my hand flush against the back of my neck, felt the warm skin just on the edge of uncomfortable, and thought, I'm probably just imagining it. There's no reason for anything to be wrong, so there shouldn't be. Did you know? I never realized that the label of chronic pain applies to me until I had the exact medical parameters spelled out, word after word, right before my eyes in a university lecture. After 9 years of downplaying. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you, Ping. And now we will have Zoe, our second final winner today. And she's going to read to us Between the Land of Wake and Sleep. So Zoe, over to you, please.
Yes, hi, good evening to everyone. I'm very excited and very thankful to be one of the finalists. So my poem, Between the Land of Wake and Sleep, it actually applies to, refers to two concepts for me. Firstly is the moment before falling asleep when you're not very sure if you're still, you still have your awareness, if you're in your dreams already. So it's like a fleeting moment where dreams and reality really collide. And the second is the moment where you transition from childhood to adulthood. And I feel that these two feelings, they're very similar or could even blend together. And so without further ado, I will read the poem. Between the Land of Wake and Sleep. Fantasies tinged with nightmare, once the breeze failed to spirit away. A bruising decade of fracture in each sorrow-poisoned suture. Yet these window panes stretch from the wall, reaching deep into my memory. They mirror your steady gait, the warm embrace I await. In time for our midnight snack, you lift me from my little bed. We tiptoe past the veil of shadows, concealing our house's hollows. Marble creaks, trees of curtains, our adventure lulls in the kitchen. A jingle of glass, the refrigerator light, banishes from the dark every blight. Nightmares asleep and awake, they bow in fright and shrivel from the shining knight in banknote armor and his ruffled 6-year daughter. Evaporated milk upon my tongue, the plague across the land recedes. In your gaze, my stalwart fortress, I forget the thorns and roses. We pause by our usual vantage point, a window that overlooks the valley, of jungle gym inns and playground sheep, between the land of wake and sleep. Past, present, and future, I hear your murmured prayer, against my hair left unpinned, borne upon the whistling wind. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And yeah, I mean, back to the we are actually coming full circle, and back to the same question that I asked about earlier, winners, is how long has this poem been germinating in your mind and in your spirit? Yes.
Well, actually, this is a quite recent one. I thought about it just a few weeks before the submission, and but it was a feeling that I have been contemplating for a long time, because I've always felt that events that happen in your childhood, especially between adulthood and childhood, I think those events always stick with you, and those are what makes you the person that you are. I think that Alka mentioned this earlier as well, that like because as a child you're not sure what exactly the event or situation could be, and you are influenced by your surroundings and what people tell you as a child. So looking back on that in hindsight now, with the awareness of an adult or an older person, those memories take on a different shade, a different color, and they kind of shift and metamorphosize as you grow as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think you have really given us an insight to how we actually grew up, and we release, in that sense, the feelings into words in a poem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And our final winner, Natalie. And Natalie sharing with us the poem Passing.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I don't have a lot to say, actually. I'm professionally, I'm a writer, but I'm only used to writing essays. I've not been writing poetry much at all, actually. I'll just go straight into my poem. It's called Passing. The waves slap low against the rocks. The rhythms thrum from depths of skin. Above me, sparrows fly in patterns. The paths are invisible to strangers who cry. The dust winds flow from land to sea, long breaths exhaled in quiet sighs. The sun sets daily to inevitably rise. Rains fall and cease, flowers bloom to die. Watching and waiting, waiting and living, loving and blooming, growing and dying. I'm nothing but a lap of tide, cresting, breaking, quietly passing.
Thank you, Natalie.
Welcome.
Maybe you'd just like to share with us what was the overriding feeling when you wrote this poem?
When I wrote this poem, I did it in a flash, because initially I wanted to write something else. But the thing is, nature has always been my inspiration, and I think it's quite telling of my age. As you grow older, you kind of look outwards a little bit more, and you stop, how do you say, questioning so much your identity. So what happened was, I started off writing something else completely, and as I wrote it, it just morphed into something about nature. And I thought about how catharsis is already available in nature, in the cycle of nature that is full of drama, it's full of anticipation, and there's climax, and there's always catharsis at the end, because we have this whole ebb and flow of things coming and going and dying and birthing, and everything. So I thought nature has it all. I'm not going to look anywhere else.
Thanks for that insight. And I think it's a very fitting close to our segment this evening, because it's like, what with modern technology, AI, and social media, and that disembodiment of relationships and emotions as well. So this is really something that pulls us back together. It's like, something as simple as nature, something that is always there in front of us. Yeah, it brings back to us, brings us back to reality, to be grounded to some extent. So thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to thank all of you winners, as well as our audience as well, that, thank you so much for being a part of Catharsis 2021. And we may publish this anthology of poems maybe in combination with the previous years as well. We may decide to do that. If that's so, then we'll contact you further later on to round out some of the details and so on. But we hope that through the sharing by our poets and winners, you can actually see that writing is a multifaceted process. It is not any one form. It is not one method in particular. It really is just about, that pure honesty that the poet has. And in sharing and willing to share, that is really brave. And what more is actually that stepping forward to come out into the public to actually just read your poem out loud, because we never know exactly who is going to receive it, who is going to benefit from that. We may think that, our feelings and our thoughts, our struggles and our consternations are, just confined to our own selves. And it's only that very personal depth and confines, but actually it's not. And what you're doing is you're showing the world that, many people are actually going through the same things. And we are not in this alone, that there are other people who may actually be able to encourage us. So continue writing, continue exploring, continue finding your own identity in life. Because at the end of the day, it's who are you really? And how do we relate to society as a whole? So thank you once again. We're going to take a group picture, and then later on, we're going to just show some advertorial slides. So Ping, can you lead us in this?
Everyone on the camera already? Okay. Get ready.
Are you going to count down 1, 2, 3 for us?
Yeah, I took one already. Wait. Let me save it first. I will take a few, don't worry. Let me save it up first. Okay, the first one, pretty okay. So maybe the next one, you want to have some expression, your hand gesture or whatever thing. Yeah. Okay, ready, Have your hand gesture ready? Okay, one more. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ping. And now I'm going to just share screen to just round off. And so please join us together with the rest of the PFS activities if you can, and continue watching this space because there's a lot more coming up in next year's events. So good night. Thank you all, and we'll keep in touch. Okay, we have come to the end of Catharsis 2021. Thank you, everybody. Good night.